This is Carl Ackerman, host of Journeys of the Mind under the broader rubric of ThinkTech Hawaii, with the problems and issues teachers face across America, and in this case in Hawaii. With all these things that are facing us in the national news, we are very lucky to have Andrea French come to us, and she has a new program, a very thoughtful new program, how to involve teachers in looking at themselves and trying to prevent her program, tries to prevent teacher burnout. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to share what I have.
We are excited to hear what you have to say. So, tell us and in the audience specifically about your program. And I know that you have a title, the Educator-Elevator, and it's supposed to be, and this is trademark, a teacher tune-up. Tell us about this program.
Well, Teacher Tune Up was developed when I suffered severe panic attacks from overwhelm and burnout of all the obligations of being a teacher. And I really went through this spiritual journey where I did a lot of inner work and I became a life coach as well. And then I started mentoring other teachers. And I really was able to craft it into this system that I call Shift, which has four stages. And it's a transformational process of uncovering layers to get down to really who you are, connecting with yourself, calming your nervous system down so that you can make the changes and be open to making improvements in small, actionable steps. And it's just life changing. I love it. And that's what it is in a nutshell.
I know you have changed teachers already, but what are specifically the four steps? What do you go through with these teachers? And of course, I'm going to ask you, are there larger implications for this? But go through the processes that you go through with teachers who have been burnt out, especially in Hawaii. And, with all this red tape that are forced on teachers, with all the demands that are made by administration, and some of those administrators are good administrators, but uh, what do you do? What are the four steps?
The steps is an acronym, of course, because I'm a teacher and I love acronyms. But it's called Shift. And the very first stage is the SH stands for shine. And because I really feel like burned out teachers lose themselves in the lesson planning, the behavior manager, the data tracker. And so this is a step to get back to your own dreams as a teacher and as a whole person. And it's finding out what you actually want and noticing the parts that you've buried underneath the burnout in order to refine your vision and reconnect to be more aligned. It's really who you are and looking at who you are when you're not performing in this role, and it's remembering that your dreams still matter. So I love this. This is the beginning of it. The second part of this whole process is involves insight, and insight is really looking at your value and what you value. A lot of teachers have their value is measured on their test scores or the amount of time they sacrifice. You really take a look at all parts of your life in order to identify what's supporting you and what your strengths are, and using these strengths as your teacher talent and coming back to who you really are so that you can use these strengths and build off of that. This whole program is to really look at your strengths and what's working for you and expand it so you don't have to start from scratch and feel overwhelmed. And we do still look at really what needs attention without any judgment or presence. But insight really creates the clarity you need to create intentional plans that shift you out of survival mode and into ease. It helps you determine what your actual values are, and so that you know where your real power lies. And that's amazing. I love that. The next part of shift is freedom. And I think that teachers carry so much guilt about not doing enough, or I might lose my job, or I can't reach all these children. And freedom is the practice of releasing all these fears so that you can have confidence, clarity, and make the change. The first step is identifying the fears and recognizing the lessons within the fears and how they could really shape you and make you stronger. And when you do this, you build your self trust and your emotional resilience. And then you're able to practice showing up as your authentic self again and really making those connections. They're so important in teaching. The final phase is transformation. And this happens when your nervous system regulation and emotional clarity flow into the classroom. You stop managing behavior from depletion and you start teaching with presence. And I love this because students don't just learn what to do, they learn how to be by watching a grounded adult model it in real time. So I love this. And you're really looking at what truly matters to you and um, taking meaningful small steps every day, which creates a momentum for life change. And it isn't about doing more, it's about being different. And when you teach from a regulated nervous system and emotional sovereignty, everything changes. Your classroom becomes a space of genuine connection. Your presence becomes the curriculum, and your students learn resilience, not from a lesson plan, but from being in a relationship with somebody who embodies it. So that's what I really love about it.
This is a fantastic program. I want to go right now to what you said about insights. How do you encourage teachers to evaluate their strengths? How do you get that classroom teacher to realize that she or he is doing great work?
It's a process, and it does take some time of unlayering the stress in order to calm yourself so that you can really connect and find out what you value as a teacher. And like for example, I value laughing and having a good time, and so I turned that into my teaching talent. So I tried to have children laugh in between my teaching in the transitions and have a lighter energy. And so really a teacher I worked with, she really valued having high expectations for her students. And within that, the students know what to expect, and the energy in the room is lighter and freer because everybody's doing the same thing. They have the same expectations, and everybody feels worthy. So those are just a couple examples of how you really connect with something within you that you really value, and it could be anything, but you could really turn that into something that you can incorporate to build your connection with the children.
I want to single out the word freedom. How do you get at that term, which is so loaded, of course, especially in the United States? How do you encourage teachers to know that they have a certain amount of freedom within their sphere? And I ask you this because, people often refer to the oh, they're a school teacher, as if I mean, that phrase encapsulates everything that goes on with this individual. And I think that the word multitask is synonymous with teacher. So how do you encourage teachers to look at their ability to do many things or to be free in their aspiration?
I think that you're right. There are a lot of expectations that teachers have. And I think that it's okay for a teacher to not be perfect and be able to be vulnerable and humble in that moment and teach their children that, everything isn't always perfect and it's okay, but you're just going to try your best. But at the same time, freedom is basically freeing, looking at what you're really afraid of and seeing the truth in it and seeing actually what this lesson is doing, giving you to build your inner strength and reframe it into what can I do to now make this change to improve this and teach the same lesson to the children in the classroom. When you are releasing that grip of being afraid, it really builds your confidence and it gives you clarity and it lets you know that change is possible. So it's just a way of freeing yourself up. Not saying that you're not going to be able to, you're going to be eliminated or all the expectations are going to be eliminated and everything's going to be okay, but it just changes the way that you show up in uncomfortable situations. It's a whole mindset thing. And you don't react, you respond instead. And I find that when you respond in a more calmer manner, it makes everything better. It makes the whole situation better.
I will come back to the transformation process, but because you've already just discussed, fears, I want to ask you whether your system or parts of your system can be applied to citizens in the United States right now at large. And the reason I'm asking you this is, most recently we've seen two people killed on, our news reports, in Minneapolis, and I think that the normal, reaction of most Americans, and they do, they could be from the left or the right. I'm not getting into left or right. What I'm getting into is just it's sort of like the killings. I'm old enough to remember the killings at Kent State, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash song, two dead in Ohio. So how can this be applied? Especially, I'm thinking, from what you've been saying, the notion of the insights and also the freedom and freedom from fear. Because this is a really fearful time in America, and I wanted you to kind of address that because often the solution to this by people one way or the other is go and vote or go out and demonstrate but not all people want to do either of those. I mean, probably most want to vote, but I'm not sure people want to go out into the streets. I mean, especially if you're sort of a conservative historian figure like myself. I'm conservative in the sense that you don't like to demonstrate because you kind of when you're in a crowd it makes you a little nervous. But what would you suggest to the average American?
Program addresses the root of the problem, which is being overwhelmed and anxious citizens can't contribute to their communities or families when they're consumed with this political rage and fear. And it's justified. I get it. But the skills that this program teaches are nervous system regulation, values clarification, emotional sovereignty, and intentional engagement. And that's exactly what we need right now. Not to check out, but to show up differently, as I was saying. Within, I can go through some of the shift. Like for teachers, we looked at what their roles were outside of being a teacher. As a person, you could really look at who you are besides all the fears that you're living through now. Now you're living as your fears, right? In your rage, and which I totally get. But now it's about reconnecting with yourself and looking who you are as a neighbor, as a parent, who you are in the community, and reclaiming your humanity beyond the your political tribe or your anxiety about what's coming next. I think that the insight helps would help people distinguish between their values and manufactured urgency. Basically, what you actually care about versus what this algorithm is telling you to care about, and what's depleting you by engaging in battles that don't align with your true priorities. It's really creating the clarity for where your real power lies and just how you show up into your sphere of influence. And I also believe that the freedom part of it isn't about becoming apathetic to the whole situation. It's about releasing this emotional stranglehold so that you can engage from agency rather than panic and choose intentional action over compulsive doom scrolling, which I everybody's probably guilty of that. And then in the transformation form of it, I think this means more of an inner recalibration to show up in your daily lives, to be more present with your families, to engage with your communities from intention rather than obligation or guilt, and model this resilience and groundedness for our children who are watching us navigate this uncertainty. So I think that it works effectively for anyone who's overwhelmed.
I heard something because I'm really struck by your term internal agency. And I was listening to another Think Tech program, and there's a gentleman named Ben, who I think is a lawyer in Canada, and he was talking about something that I hadn't thought about before. But when I saw those, the reporting of the two deaths in Minneapolis, he was kind of relating it to the African American experience in America, for a long time. And I thought to myself, you know, this and then he started to talk about what people could do. And I think, once you get to that realization, after the third step in your program, where you can realize that you have the freedom and things like this, um, how do you transform yourself into realizing what you can do, um, as opposed to what, I mean, some people might, going back to my original statement, some people will say, well, I could go out and demonstrate or I could vote. Well, besides voting, if you don't want to go out and demonstrate, what can you do? And how do you get people, more importantly, to realize that they can transform themselves to do something else? And coupled with this is, do you ever have teachers that say, okay, I've thought about this deeply. I've got to make a change, like Michael Jackson said about, take a look in the mirror and make the change, right? So, I mean, what, what happens when people transform themselves? And do you have teachers that transform themselves out of the teaching profession?
I have like probably 1 out of 4 of my clients are ready to leave, and that's great. If you're not wanting to teach, you should not be a teacher. Teachers have such an impact on, and there's nothing against that either. Like I totally get it. But if you find what your heart's desire is and it's something else, then you should go do that to, make yourself happier. And so I totally encourage that. But circling back to making a change, I just want to say that teachers or people really don't go straight into that process. Like you said, it's down to the transformation stage. My program is about 6 months, but it gets down to working together for a little bit because when you come in, your nervous system is dysregulated, and any type of change is scary, and your brain shuts down, and even if the change meant improving your life, it's still not safe because you don't know what that's like. And so when you're in the fight or flight stage, that's it's not possible. But like I said, through the process of getting to know your values and releasing your fears and then coming into the transformation stage, it is actually, at first you can have long-term goals, but it's really more of those small actionable steps on a day-to-day basis that you can take to calm your nervous system, to reconnect with yourself, and acknowledge, like, living in the moment. And I'm not saying to totally ignore what's going on around you, but not focus everything on that, because really what you focus on expands. So you want to try to focus on things that are improving your life or ways of living that really make you feel grounded and healthy. And I think that this is so where it gets powerful to me, because as a collective, when more of us operate it from the centered place, we raise the energy. And one grounded person in one room changes the room. 10 people in a school can change the entire school, and hundreds of people in the community modeling common clarity and intentional action that shifts the entire field.
That transformation, I'm thinking about also of today on the national scale when, the senator from Arizona, the former astronaut, won his case, so to speak, where a judge just said, hey, this guy has the right to freedom of speech. He could tell people in the military that they should obey the law. So, and I think he's the person that you're kind of referencing, the one person in the room who said, "No, I'm not going to be scared by this. I'm gonna do this." But do you have examples of teachers who do it on a local level that that you've worked with that basically you've seen go through an amazing, especially after 6 months, an amazing transformation and lose the burnout ticket and instead invite themselves to do things that are more meaningful in the classroom or more meaningful for them in the
The three main challenges are for teachers are overwhelming burnout and lack of appreciation is a big thing. As a matter of fact, that's the number one reason why teachers leave is lack of appreciation and lack of resources. So I worked with a lady for a while in Kazakhstan, and she, when coming into it, she was just so overwhelmed and burnt out because she really felt like she wasn't receiving the recognition that she should for everything that she's doing. And she was absolutely correct in that. And so we worked through the different steps of it. And as we got down to really releasing these fears, she was kind of afraid that maybe she wasn't capable enough as a teacher to deserve it. And it was a whole thing where she went through this whole mindset shift. And I remember the day she came in and I just asked her, I said, I know when we started this process, you said that you don't have enough support from administration and or appreciation. And do you feel like that's still the case? And she probably said, no, I don't need that. I get all the recognition and appreciation from my students and from their successes. And this takes time to do to really dive in deep and find a place of genuine appreciation. And I was so proud of her, and it's really not as easy as how I'm saying it, but it was. I was just so proud and amazed at her.
Did you mention that she's a teacher from Kazakhstan?
She's not from Kazakhstan, but I taught at a private school in Kazakhstan, and she's from the United States,
But she,
actually.
but she was teaching in Kazakhstan.
Yes, she was.
Was Kazakhstan independent then, or was it was it an independent country, or was it part of the former Soviet Union?
It's independent now.
Okay, okay, yeah, I know it's independent now. I just want to know the time. I should look at you and realize that it was post 1991. But
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that.
no, no, no.
It was recent.
It was recent. No, that's great. And
Yeah.
as I think I mentioned to you, I heard about a bit of this story from you earlier that our connection in Hawaii to Kazakhstan is that our senior senator from Hawaii, Brian Schatz, has an older brother by the name of Ed Schatz who speaks fluent Kazakh and is a Russianist at the University of Toronto because I think all those four boys in the Schatz family have dual citizenship, both Canadian and U.S. So I'm, I want to go back to this notion of transformation. So once you realize, either if you're in the classroom or you're currently a citizen of the United States, and you're aware of what's been going on, you know that you have your own freedom. Does that allow you to take either educational action or civic action in sort of a new way? I mean, it's sort of like you've broken through, as we say, there's never been a woman president, and we haven't gotten to that wonderful state of being in the United States. But does it break sort of the glass with the glass ceilings um, of individual ability?
I think so because I think that when you're able to transform and really connect within yourself and show from come from your heart, from a heart space instead of reacting in scared place, it's totally different in your response and your ideas and wanting to work with others. So I definitely think that anything's possible when you're in that type of a space one of the clients that I worked with really loved the transformation phase because she had the demands of being a mom and her career and her marriage and her personal time, and she found that by having these daily manageable goals she was able to support her emotional healing and her professional success. And then also by understanding her fears and what triggers them, prioritizing the self-care, and she was able to rebuild her energy and confidence. And it really provided just simple, actionable rituals that calmed her nervous system and gradually became sustainable routines. And through these small shifts, it created lasting changes in her life, her marriage, and her overall well being.
I think what's really great about your program is that it makes teachers, and it could apply to civic Americans also, aware of why they're feeling this way and and what to do about it. But I wanted to get at something else. Explain your own personal situation in terms of classroom teacher. What kind of things did you face as a teacher that were sort of overwhelming? Because I know myself, having been a teacher for many years, that there were issues that I faced, but being in the public sector as opposed to myself, that I was in the private sector at Iolani and Punahou schools, I'm sure that you faced a lot more. Well, I know you probably faced a lot more bureaucracy, but I wanted to know what kind of issues you faced.
Well, it's just, teachers are placed in uncomfortable situations all the time. And I was moved several times to teach different things that I wasn't prepared to teach without the support or the training, really. You know, teachers are supposed to take, or sorry, it's supposed to teach children how to regulate their emotions. And we were never taught how to teach ourselves how to regulate our own emotions, let alone somebody else. So there's that. And then, new curriculum and more professional development, tracking data, analyzing the data, writing the lesson plans, performing the lessons, then teaching or grading, talking parents, parent communication, and there's just so much that's within this one job. I mean, it's extremely important to be able to do all those things, but it can be overwhelming if you are burned out or you're tired.
I think that notion of regulating emotions is also a stellar one. And that is because when I listen to television broadcasts not so true of CNN. I think you don't see a lot of emotion. But when you watch other networks, people are at a high state of volatility. And I always wonder about that. I mean, they're making a lot of money, and but their pitch is so strident, and that's why I enjoy not to sort of swing too many golden stars towards ThinkTech Hawaii. That's why I like ThinkTech Hawaii, and why I like to be a host here is because you can really have a discussion and a wonderful discussion with a calmness that I think is pertinent. So one really important last question for you, Andrea, and that is, where do you hope to take this program that you have that is so valuable and can help so many, not only teachers, and when we were talking about going on the show, I said to you, you should apply this to our nation right now because it will give people the opportunity to think about where do they want to go in terms of this overall chasm in terms of our daily politics. I mean, what's where can people go? What can they do? But I mean, in a sense, if you don't mind me saying so, I think you're giving people agency. And I think that's probably one of the most important things you can do in life is give others agency. So where do you hope to take this program?
I was trying to escape these problems by doing that, but I found out it's everywhere. So my goal is to be an international network of a teacher tribe and have other educator elevators. It's going to take more than me to do that, but that would be my ultimate dream, is to have that. And the beauty of all of this is that teachers, even if you're not an educator, elevator, or a mentor, you can share your success stories or your strategies that worked for you to other teachers and so on, and create a whole ripple effect, a collective that can raise the energy, just like we were talking about. So that's my ultimate dream, is that we can empower each other and worldwide help heal ourselves and grow, teach those same skills to children, just by embodying who we are, teaching them how to be, and heal the entire world. That's kind of a big dream.
That is a great dream. I also wanted to mention to you that in a role that I had working with in the POYO program at the Clementi Teaching POYO program at Punahou School, I worked with a lot of different administrators and things like that. And often, if a student misbehaved, they want me to kick him out of the program. One chance and you're out. And I was thinking to myself that many teachers face these things, and they try to provide for their students, even giving them money, feeding them, in places where they, are not getting a solid meal. And the teachers are really on the front line. That was a metaphor that perhaps the greatest educator I ever came across, David Kuhn from Iolani School, he said teachers are on the front line, and we are on the front line. And I think what you've done is created a program which will keep those people healthy on the front lines. I hate to use the war metaphor, but still it seems to work. So, in any case, Andrea, do you have any parting words, not only for the academic community, but also for Americans who are coping with a lot of stress every day, seeing what's going on in on a daily life? And I come back to those two people who were shot and killed by agents of our own federal government. And, it's such a direct relationship to not the circumstances around it so much, but the deaths sponsored by a government enterprise in the United States, which is, beyond awful. But what's your advice?
I definitely understand the heartache and feel the pain, like right now, as you were telling me, and I don't want to dismiss that at all. I think it's very important to recognize it and feel it. I also think that it's important to also focus on what you can do to improve your actions and the way you show up in situations, so that you can model that calmness with your children, with different people in the community, and really reclaim our humanity, beyond this political tribe. I think that, as a collective, if our energy is calmer through these times, it will really help us respond in a healthier way. And I'm not discounting anything that went on. It's totally horrible. I recognize that, but I really think that we could change the way that we respond and not react.
That's a great way to part ways today. Thank you, Andrea French, for all your wisdom. And, just to kind of tag on to what you're saying, I mean, I think that's what we try to do in Journeys of the Mind, but also under the umbrella of Think Tech Hawaii, is to give a sort of mild, thoughtful, to have a mild, thoughtful discussion about the issues that are facing all of us. And what you provided, Andrea French, is the ability to get teachers and, in addition, civic minded Americans to go through a series of steps in order to allow people to get to the freedom and to the ability to approach even the most difficult issues in their own lives and in other people's lives. So thank you, hui ho. This is Carl Ackerman, host of Journeys of the Mind, and under that umbrella called Think Tech Hawaii. Aloha.